The first rays of the morning sun stretched across the busy streets of Lagos, bringing life back to the city. Traders arranged their goods, buses honked impatiently, and the smell of roasted corn mixed with the scent of engine oil drifting from a row of roadside mechanic workshops. At the very end of the row, where the broken concrete met a dusty open field, stood an old zinc shed that looked ready to collapse. Its rusty roof was filled with holes, and whenever it rained, water poured through so heavily that anyone inside had to keep moving to avoid getting soaked. That broken shed was home. It was also the workshop of Zara. Zara was a beautiful young black African woman in her late 20s. Although hardship had left faint lines of exhaustion on her face, her warm brown eyes still carried kindness, determination, and quiet hope. She had not walked for 7 years. A tragic road accident had damaged her spine, leaving both of her legs permanently paralyzed. Since that day, she had depended entirely on an old wheelchair with worn-out tires that squeaked every time she pushed its wheels. Life had taken almost everything from her. The accident had also claimed the lives of her parents. With no close relatives willing to care for her, she slowly lost the family home because she could no longer afford the bills. Friends disappeared one after another until she found herself sleeping wherever she could find shelter. Yet one thing remained untouched: her spirit. Every morning before sunrise, Zara folded the thin blanket she slept on, placed it neatly inside a small waterproof bag, and whispered a short prayer. "Thank you, Lord, for another day. Please give me strength." She never asked God why she had become disabled. She only prayed for enough strength to keep moving forward. After saying her prayer, she rolled herself toward a small plastic basin and washed her face with water she had carefully stored the night before. She cleaned her hands thoroughly because she believed a mechanic's hands should always be ready for work, no matter how poor they were. Around her were old engine blocks, broken gearboxes, worn-out tires, bent tools, and scraps of metal most people considered useless. To Zara, they were opportunities. She had collected nearly every tool she owned from rubbish dumps or abandoned garages. Whenever someone threw away a damaged wrench or rusty screwdriver, Zara repaired it until it became useful again. Nothing was wasted. Across the road, several mechanics had already begun working. One of them glanced toward Zara and laughed loudly. "Look who's opening her fake workshop again." Another mechanic shook his head. "If customers are foolish enough to let a woman in a wheelchair repair their cars, then they deserve whatever happens." Several others laughed with him. Zara heard every word. She always did. But instead of responding, she smiled softly and continued arranging her tools. She had learned that arguing with people who had already judged her only wasted precious energy. Not long afterward, an elderly taxi driver slowly drove into the dusty area near her shed. His old yellow taxi coughed loudly before the engine died. He stepped out and smiled. "Good morning, my daughter." Zara smiled back. "Good morning, Papa Musa." Papa Musa had been one of her first customers years earlier. Unlike many others, he had never doubted her because of her wheelchair. "My taxi refused to start again," he said with an embarrassed laugh. "Can you help me?" "I'll try." She rolled herself beside the vehicle and opened the bonnet. Within seconds, her eyes carefully scanned every part of the engine. She listened, touched, smelled. Then she reached for a small wrench. Her hands moved confidently with years of practice. Although she could not stand, she had mastered every movement from her wheelchair. She leaned forward carefully, balancing herself with remarkable precision while tightening a loose battery connection and cleaning a corroded terminal. A few minutes later, she nodded. "Try it now." Papa Musa climbed inside. The engine started immediately. His face lit up with excitement. "It works." He climbed out laughing happily. "My daughter, you're a miracle." People nearby stopped to watch. Some looked surprised. Others refused to admit what they had seen. Papa Musa reached into his pocket. He counted the money several times before handing Zara a few worn Naira notes. "I'm sorry. This is all I made yesterday." Zara accepted the money with a grateful smile. "It is enough." In truth, it wasn't enough. The payment could barely buy one decent meal. Still, she thanked him sincerely. As Papa Musa drove away, another customer approached. This time it was a young man with a motorcycle that refused to start. Before he could speak, one of the roadside mechanics rushed over. "Don't let her touch your bike. She doesn't know what she's doing." The young man looked uncertain. He glanced at Zara, then at the other mechanic. Finally, he chose the larger workshop across the road. Nearly an hour later, the motorcycle still refused to start. Frustrated, the young man slowly returned. "Can you look at it?" Zara simply smiled. She never reminded people they had doubted her. Within 5 minutes, she discovered a blocked fuel line. After cleaning it and replacing a damaged hose, the motorcycle roared back to life. The young man stared at her in disbelief. I judged you wrongly." "It happens," Zara replied kindly. He paid her fairly before leaving. As the afternoon sun grew hotter, business slowed. Zara quietly opened a small food container. Inside were only 2 pieces of dry bread and a sachet of drinking water. Before taking a bite, she noticed 3 hungry children standing nearby. Their clothes were dirty, and they looked as though they hadn't eaten all day. Without hesitation, Zara smiled and called them over. "Come." The children walked cautiously toward her. She broke the bread into small pieces and shared everything she had. "What about you?" one little girl asked. "I'm not very hungry," Zara lied gently. The children thanked her and ran away smiling. Only after they had disappeared did Zara drink the last few drops of water. Her stomach growled with hunger, but she ignored it. Seeing those children smile was enough. As evening approached, dark clouds gathered above Lagos. The wind picked up, carrying dust across the road. Most mechanics hurried home. Zara remained beneath her leaking shed, carefully covering her precious tools with old plastic sheets so they would not rust overnight. Rain began falling heavily. Water dripped through the broken roof onto the concrete floor. She shifted her wheelchair from one dry spot to another, trying to avoid the largest leaks. She sighed quietly. One day she hoped to have a real workshop, a place with solid walls, a roof that didn't leak, a bed instead of flattened cartons. But until then, she would keep working. She would keep believing. Just as she was preparing to settle in for another long night beneath the old shed, the distant sound of powerful engines echoed down the road. Several luxury SUVs sped toward the mechanic village. Their headlights reflected against the rain-soaked street as they came to a sudden stop. At the center of the convoy was a gleaming black Rolls-Royce that had unexpectedly broken down. Bodyguards quickly jumped out, scanning the surroundings while expensive suited engineers rushed toward the stalled vehicle. Curious mechanics abandoned their own workshops and hurried over. Even Zara watched from beneath her leaking roof. She had no idea that the man sitting inside that Rolls-Royce was Ethan Cole, one of Africa's most successful billionaires. She also had no idea that this unexpected breakdown was about to change her life forever. The heavy rain continued to pour as the luxurious convoy remained stranded in front of the mechanic village. The sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom sat silently in the middle of the muddy road, its polished body splashed with brown water. Expensive SUVs surrounded it while men in tailored black suits hurried from one side of the vehicle to the other. The entire roadside mechanic community had stopped working. Some stood on broken concrete blocks. Others sheltered beneath rusty zinc roofs. Everyone wanted to know why such an expensive car had broken down in their neighborhood. Inside the Rolls-Royce sat Ethan Cole. At 35, Ethan was one of Africa's youngest self-made billionaires and the owner of Cole Motors, the largest automobile manufacturing company on the continent. His handsome face remained calm, but anyone who knew him could tell he was growing impatient. He glanced at his silver wristwatch. "I've already missed one meeting," he said quietly. His personal assistant lowered his head. "We're sorry, sir. The engineers are still trying." Outside, 3 senior engineers from Cole Motors worked frantically around the vehicle. One connected a diagnostic computer to the car. Another checked the battery. The third examined the engine compartment with a flashlight despite the rain. After nearly an hour, frustration was written across every face. "I can't find the fault," one engineer admitted. "It doesn't make sense," another replied. Everything appears normal. A bodyguard walked over to the assistant. Should we call for another vehicle, sir? The assistant nodded. We may have no choice. Across the road, Zara quietly watched everything from beneath the leaking roof of her tiny shed. Although she remained seated in her old wheelchair, her eyes never left the Rolls-Royce. She listened carefully. She noticed the sound the engine had made when one engineer tried to start it again. Click, silence, click, silence. Her eyebrows narrowed. Something about the sound felt familiar. She had heard it before. One of the roadside mechanics noticed her staring. What are you looking at? He mocked. You think you can repair that? The other mechanics burst into laughter. Those engineers studied abroad. They work for billionaires. If they can't fix it, what can a homeless woman in a wheelchair possibly do? More laughter followed. Zara looked away quietly. She had no interest in arguing. She simply continued observing the vehicle. Finally, she gathered enough courage. Slowly pushing the wheels of her chair, she crossed the muddy ground toward the convoy. Several bodyguards immediately stepped in front of her. You can't come closer. She smiled politely. I only want to help. One bodyguard frowned. Our engineers are handling it. I understand, Zara replied gently. But I think I know what's wrong. The bodyguards exchanged amused glances. One of them chuckled. You? Another looked at her worn clothes, grease-covered hands, and patched wheelchair. You must be joking. Nearby mechanics laughed even louder. One shouted across the road. Tell her to repair bicycles instead. Another added, that car is worth more than this entire street. Even some people watching shook their heads. Poor people often dreamed big. But this seemed impossible. The commotion caught Ethan's attention. He stepped out of the Rolls-Royce beneath a large umbrella held by one of his security officers. Despite the rain, his elegant appearance drew everyone's attention. He wore a perfectly fitted charcoal gray suit with polished black shoes that reflected the streetlights. His calm eyes settled on Zara. What is happening? He asked. The assistant answered respectfully. Sir, this woman says she can repair the car. Several engineers laughed openly. Our team has already checked everything. There is nothing left to inspect. One senior engineer folded his arms confidently. With all due respect, sir, allowing a roadside mechanic to touch this vehicle could damage it further. Ethan looked back at Zara. She did not appear nervous. She did not appear desperate. She simply looked confident. What makes you think you know the problem? He asked. Zara smiled. I don't know for certain, but I think the engine is healthy. One engineer rolled his eyes. We already know that. She continued calmly. I don't think it's the engine. I think it's an electrical interruption. The engineers exchanged puzzled looks. She pointed gently toward the front of the vehicle. May I listen to it once? Silence filled the road. Finally, Ethan nodded. Let her try. Several engineers immediately protested. Sir, if something goes wrong. Ethan raised one hand. She has my permission. The bodyguards stepped aside. Zara rolled closer to the luxury vehicle. She carefully opened the bonnet. Instead of touching anything immediately, she simply listened. One engineer looked confused. Why isn't she doing anything? Another whispered sarcastically. Maybe she's praying. Zara ignored them. Her fingers lightly rested against one section of the engine, while another hand gently traced several wiring connections. She then asked quietly, Can someone start the engine? One engineer reluctantly entered the driver's seat. Click. Silence. Click. Silence. She closed her eyes briefly. Then she smiled. I thought so. Everyone stared. She pointed toward a small wiring harness hidden beneath part of the intake system. The electronic fuel relay isn't receiving stable power. One engineer laughed. Impossible. We already checked every relay. Zara shook her head. You checked the relay. You didn't check the connector behind it. The engineer frowned. What connector? Without saying another word, Zara asked softly, May I have a screwdriver? No one moved. The engineers looked at one another. Finally, To everyone's surprise, Ethan personally walked toward his toolbox, picked up a screwdriver, and handed it directly to her. The roadside became completely silent. No one expected a billionaire to hand tools to a homeless mechanic. Zara thanked him with a smile. Working carefully from her wheelchair, she loosened a protective panel and reached toward a hidden electrical connector. "There," she whispered. A tiny amount of corrosion had formed inside the connector because moisture had slowly entered over time. It was almost invisible. She cleaned the contact using a small piece of fine sandpaper from her toolbox. After securing the connection firmly, she replaced the panel. Then she looked up. "Please try again." The engineer hesitated. He turned the key. For one brief second, nothing happened. Then, vroom, the powerful engine came roaring to life with its smooth, deep growl. The luxurious vehicle purred perfectly. No warning lights appeared. No strange noises followed. Everything worked flawlessly. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. The rain continued falling, but every eye remained fixed on Zara. One mechanic accidentally dropped the wrench in his hand. A bodyguard slowly removed his sunglasses in disbelief. The engineers stared at one another, unable to understand how they had missed something so simple. Papa Musa, who had returned to collect something from his taxi, smiled proudly. "I told all of you," he said. "She's special." The senior engineer walked toward the car and checked the connector himself. His face slowly turned red. She had been right, completely right. He looked at Zara before lowering his head. "I was mistaken." Zara simply smiled. "It happens." There was no pride in her voice, no desire to embarrass anyone, only kindness. Ethan looked at her with genuine admiration. For years, he had surrounded himself with experts, executives, and highly educated professionals. Yet the person who had solved the problem that defeated all of them was a homeless woman in an old wheelchair who had been mocked only moments earlier. He had met thousands of people during his career, but no one had impressed him quite like Zara. As the rain finally began to ease, Ethan realized something unexpected. He no longer cared about the meeting he had missed. Instead, he found himself wanting to know the remarkable woman whose hands could repair engines, but whose quiet strength seemed capable of repairing something far deeper. For the first time in many years, the billionaire climbed back into his car with a question echoing in his mind. Who is Zara? The black Rolls-Royce glided quietly through the streets of Lagos, its powerful engine humming smoothly after Zara's repair. Rainwater shimmered on the road as the convoy made its way toward Cole Motors headquarters, one of the tallest office buildings in the city. Inside the luxurious back seat, Ethan Cole sat silently, staring out of the window. His assistant, Michael, glanced at him through the rearview mirror. "Sir, should I reschedule your meeting with the investors?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. His thoughts were somewhere else. He kept seeing the image of the young woman in the old wheelchair. Her clothes were worn, her hands were stained with grease, yet she had remained calm while highly trained engineers laughed at her. Even after proving them wrong, she hadn't insulted anyone or demanded praise. She had simply smiled. That smile stayed in his mind. "Sir?" Michael asked again. Ethan finally looked up. "Yes, reschedule it. Tomorrow." "Yes." Michael nodded before making the call. A few minutes later, they arrived at Cole Motors. Employees lined up respectfully as Ethan walked through the glass entrance. Normally, he would head straight to his office and begin reviewing contracts, but today he couldn't concentrate. He opened a financial report. He read the first page 3 times. Not a single word stayed in his mind. Instead, he found himself wondering if Zara had eaten lunch. He remembered the tiny workshop beneath the leaking roof, the patched wheelchair, the rusty tools she treasured. Yet despite having almost nothing, she had carried herself with remarkable dignity. Most people complained when life became difficult. She never had. Later that afternoon, Ethan called for the chief engineer. The older man entered nervously. "You wanted to see me, sir?" Ethan leaned back in his chair. "Tell me honestly." The engineer swallowed. "Yes, sir. How did all of you miss such a simple electrical fault?" The man sighed heavily. We relied too much on the computer diagnostics. Ethan nodded slowly. And she didn't. No, sir. She listened to the engine. The engineer lowered his eyes. I've been repairing luxury vehicles for 23 years. He paused. I've never seen anyone diagnose a problem the way she did. Ethan thanked him before dismissing him. When the office became quiet again, he pressed the intercom. Michael. Yes, sir? I want information about the woman. Michael looked surprised. The mechanic? Yes. Everything. Ethan thought for a moment. No. He smiled slightly. I'll learn about her myself. That evening, instead of returning to his mansion after work, Ethan made an unusual decision. He changed out of his expensive designer suit and into simple jeans, an ordinary shirt, and a pair of sneakers. He removed his luxury wristwatch and left his chauffeur behind. For the first time in years, Africa's billionaire automobile tycoon drove an old pickup truck that belonged to one of the company's test departments. No security, no convoy, no assistance, just Ethan. When he arrived at the mechanic village, the evening sun was beginning to set. Most workshops were closing for the day. Zara was still working. She was repairing an old commercial bus while sitting in her wheelchair. Her hands moved confidently beneath the open engine cover. She looked up as she heard footsteps. Oh, she smiled warmly. It's you. Ethan smiled back. My car is making another strange noise. She laughed softly. The expensive one? No. He pointed toward the old pickup truck. This one. She rolled closer and looked at the vehicle. What noise? Ethan scratched the back of his head. I actually don't know. She looked at him for a few seconds before laughing again. You don't know? I only know something doesn't feel right. Let's find out. She carefully checked the truck. Within minutes, she discovered the problem. Your fan belt is worn. That's all. That's all. She replaced it with an inexpensive spare. When the engine started smoothly, Ethan smiled. How much do I owe you? She named a very small amount. Ethan frowned. That's too little. She shook her head. It's the normal price. He quietly paid double. When she noticed, she immediately tried to return the extra money. You gave me too much. You earned it. No. She held out the money. I don't charge people more than necessary. Ethan stared at her. He had spent years surrounded by people who constantly wanted something from him. Business partners wanted contracts. Friends wanted investments. Even distant relatives wanted money. Yet this woman was trying to return extra payment she desperately needed. He accepted the change back with genuine respect. What is your name? He asked. Zara. I'm Ethan. It's nice to meet you, Ethan. There was no excitement in her voice. No recognition. No attempt to impress him. To her, he was simply another customer. They talked for a while. She told him she had learned mechanics by watching experienced workers and reading old repair manuals people threw away. I couldn't afford school, she admitted. So I became my own teacher. Ethan looked around her workshop. I don't see many tools. She smiled. I have enough. He knew she didn't. Most of the tools were old, broken, or repaired several times. Still, she never complained. As they spoke, an elderly woman pushing a wheelbarrow approached. My son's motorcycle won't start. I don't have much money. Can you help me? Without hesitation, Zara nodded. Of course. She repaired the motorcycle in less than 15 minutes. When the grateful woman offered a few crumpled Naira notes, Zara noticed how little she had. Keep your money, Zara said gently. But you'll need it more than I do. The woman's eyes filled with tears. She blessed Zara repeatedly before leaving. Ethan watched everything silently. This woman had no proper home, no steady income, no guarantee of her next meal. Yet she had just worked for free because someone else needed help. As darkness settled over the mechanic village, Zara closed her toolbox. I'm done for today. Ethan noticed there was no house nearby for her to enter. Instead, she spread flattened cartons beneath the leaking shed. She carefully folded an old blanket onto them. His heart tightened. You sleep here. She nodded casually. It keeps the rain off me most nights. Most nights, she smiled. When the wind changes direction, I get wet. She said it so calmly that it sounded almost normal. But Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. He had dozens of guest rooms in his mansion. Rooms no one used. Meanwhile, Zara considered a leaking mechanic shed a blessing. She caught him looking concerned and smiled reassuringly. Don't worry. I've survived worse. As Ethan drove away that night, the city lights blurred before his eyes. He couldn't stop thinking about her. She had every reason to become bitter. Every reason to hate life. Every reason to give up. Instead, she chose kindness. She chose gratitude. She chose hope. For the first time in many years, Ethan realized he wasn't thinking about business deals, profits, or board meetings. He was thinking about a homeless mechanic in a wheelchair whose strength made everyone around her seem weak. And without even realizing it, the walls he had built around his heart for years had begun to crack. The days that followed settled into a quiet routine. Almost every afternoon, after finishing his work at Cole Motors, Ethan drove the same old pickup truck to the roadside mechanic village. He parked a short distance from Zara's tiny workshop so no one would suspect he was wealthy, then walked the rest of the way with a smile on his face. At first, Zara assumed he simply liked bringing his old truck to her because she charged fair prices. But after his fourth visit in 1 week, she folded her arms and laughed. Ethan. He looked up innocently. Yes. Your pickup truck is either the unluckiest vehicle in Lagos. She raised an eyebrow playfully. Or you're inventing problems. He scratched the back of his head and laughed. I think it's just getting old. She rolled her eyes. I repaired the same truck yesterday. I know. And today you say the air conditioner is making a strange sound. It is. She turned it on. Cold air immediately filled the cabin. It sounds perfectly normal. Ethan couldn't help smiling. I guess it fixed itself. They both burst into laughter. For the first time in years, Ethan laughed without thinking about work, investors, or deadlines. Around Zara, everything felt simple. Their conversations slowly became longer than the repairs. Sometimes they spoke about cars. Sometimes about childhood dreams. Sometimes about life itself. Yet one thing surprised Ethan more than anything else. Zara never complained. Not once. She never complained about sleeping beneath a leaking roof. She never complained about being unable to walk. She never complained about losing her parents. Whenever he asked how she remained so positive, she simply smiled. If I spend my time complaining, I won't have enough time left to be grateful. Her answer stayed with him long after he drove home. One afternoon, Ethan arrived carrying 2 cups of hot coffee and a small paper bag filled with meat pies. I thought you might be hungry, he said. Zara smiled warmly. Thank you. Before eating, she looked around. Across the road sat an elderly man who sold newspapers. His hands trembled with age, and he looked exhausted. Without saying a word, Zara wheeled herself over to him and handed him one of the meat pies. Please eat. The old man looked surprised. But this is yours. I still have one. He accepted it gratefully. Ethan watched quietly. By the time Zara returned, she still hadn't touched her own food. Instead, she broke her remaining meat pie in half and offered one piece to Ethan. You bought it, he said. So, you should eat it. We can share. He accepted the piece, realizing she didn't think twice about sharing, even when she had very little. The following day, Ethan decided to learn more about her without asking questions that might reopen old wounds. Instead, he simply observed. He noticed how every customer left smiling. Some paid her properly. Some underpaid her. A few promised to return with money and never did. Still, Zara treated everyone with the same kindness. Late that afternoon, a heavily pregnant woman pushed an old motorcycle toward the workshop. My husband is at the hospital, she said anxiously. I need this bike to take food to him, but I can't afford the repair. Zara immediately began working. 40 minutes later, the motorcycle started perfectly. The woman searched her purse. I only have 1,000 naira. Zara gently pushed the money back into her hand. Use it for your husband. The woman covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. God will bless you. After she left, Ethan couldn't stay silent. You worked for almost an hour. So? You earned nothing. Zara smiled. I earned her smile. But you need money too. I know. She looked toward the road where the woman had disappeared. Sometimes people need kindness more than I need payment. Ethan lowered his eyes. He had spent years calculating profits, investments, and business strategies. Listening to Zara made him realize there were some things money could never measure. That evening, after leaving the workshop, Ethan quietly instructed Michael to investigate Zara's background. Be careful, he said. I don't want her disturbed. I simply want to know her story. Yes, sir. 2 days later, Michael entered Ethan's office carrying a thin brown file. I found everything we could. Ethan opened it slowly. Inside were photographs of Zara from years earlier. One picture showed a smiling young woman standing proudly beside her parents in front of a small family house. Another showed her wearing overalls while learning basic mechanical repairs from a neighborhood garage owner. Then came the accident report. A speeding truck had lost control during heavy rain, crashed into the family car. Her parents died at the scene. Zara survived after several surgeries, but doctors could not save the movement in her legs. Medical bills consumed every savings the family had. Eventually, the house was sold. There were no close relatives willing to care for her. She disappeared from public records soon afterward. Michael quietly continued. She refused to beg. She taught herself advanced mechanical repairs by collecting old engineering books people threw away. Ethan turned another page. His eyes widened. What's this? Statements from people in the mechanic village. One mechanic admitted that Zara had secretly repaired several vehicles overnight for struggling workers without charging them. Another said she often bought food for hungry children before buying food for herself. One widow said Zara repaired her late husband's taxi every month for free. Michael looked at Ethan. Sir, I've never investigated anyone like her. Everyone says the same thing. What? They've never heard her speak badly about anyone. Ethan slowly closed the file. He sat quietly for several minutes. In the corporate world, he constantly met successful people who demanded recognition for every good deed they performed. Zara expected nothing. No applause. No publicity. No reward. She simply helped people because she believed it was the right thing to do. The next afternoon, Ethan returned to the mechanic village as usual. He found Zara tightening the wheel nuts on an old delivery van. She looked up and smiled. Your truck isn't broken today? No. So why are you here? He smiled. I thought maybe we could just talk. She laughed softly. You really don't like going home early, do you? I'm beginning to think I don't. They sat together beneath the old zinc roof as the evening breeze cooled the dusty street. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, felt peaceful. Finally, Zara looked at him. You know. What? I've never met anyone like you. Ethan smiled. I was about to say the same thing. Neither of them realized that, little by little, friendship was growing into something much deeper. For Zara, Ethan had become the one person who saw beyond her wheelchair. For Ethan, Zara had become the one person who saw beyond appearances. Neither knew what the future held. But somewhere deep inside his heart, Ethan had already begun to understand a truth he had spent years searching for. The greatest treasures in life were often hidden beneath the simplest appearances. Weeks passed, and before either of them realized it, Ethan's daily visits to the mechanic village had become part of their lives. Every afternoon, Zara would find herself glancing toward the road, pretending to organize her tools while secretly waiting for the familiar old pickup truck to appear. And almost every day it did. The moment Ethan stepped out of the truck with his warm smile, the entire day seemed brighter. You came, Zara said one afternoon, unable to hide her smile. I told you I'd come. You never miss a day. I found my favorite mechanic. She laughed softly. I think you're my only customer who hopes his vehicle has problems. I can't argue with that. Their laughter echoed through the mechanic village. For the first time in years, Zara felt something she thought she had lost forever. She felt seen. Not as a woman in a wheelchair. Not as a homeless mechanic. Simply as Zara. But while happiness quietly grew between them, so did suspicion. The roadside mechanics had begun talking. That man comes here every day. Why would anyone keep returning to this place? He must be rich. No ordinary man spends that much time with a homeless cripple. One afternoon, as Ethan was leaving, one mechanic secretly followed him. From a distance, he watched Ethan climb into a luxury SUV parked several streets away. The old pickup truck had only been a disguise. Waiting beside the SUV were bodyguards dressed in black suits. The mechanic's mouth fell open. That man. He's wealthy. By the next morning, rumors had spread throughout the mechanic village. Nobody knew Ethan was Africa's famous billionaire, but everyone agreed he was extremely rich. People began whispering whenever he arrived. He must own companies. Look at those bodyguards. I heard he lives in a mansion. Soon, the gossip reached social media after someone secretly photographed Ethan talking to Zara. The picture spread quickly. Rich businessman spends every afternoon with homeless mechanic in a wheelchair. Thousands of strangers commented. Some admired him. Most mocked him. He must be seeking attention. She's probably pretending to be poor. What could a rich man possibly see in her? Those cruel words spread far beyond the mechanic village. Inside the luxurious Cole family mansion, Ethan's mother placed her phone on the dining table with an expression of disbelief. His father adjusted his reading glasses. What is this? His younger sister sighed. It's all over the internet. The photograph showed Ethan smiling while helping Zara tighten a bolt on an old motorcycle. His mother looked deeply disappointed. Please tell me this isn't true. At that moment, Ethan walked into the dining room. He immediately noticed the silence. What happened? His father slid the phone toward him. Ethan looked at the picture, then calmly placed the phone back on the table. It's true. His mother stared at him. You know this woman? Yes. You spend every day with her? Yes. His father frowned. Ethan, you're the CEO of Cole Motors. You represent this family. You can't keep associating with a homeless cripple. The words pierced Ethan's heart. He looked directly at his father. Her name is Zara. His father sighed impatiently. That isn't the point. It is the point. His mother's voice softened. My son, we only want what's best for you. There are educated women, successful women, women from respectable families. You can marry anyone. Why choose someone who has nothing? Ethan answered quietly. Because she has something many wealthy people don't. And what is that? His father asked. A beautiful heart. No one spoke. His father finally stood. You'll end this friendship. I won't. You'll embarrass this family. I don't care. His father's face hardened. You will. Without another word, Ethan walked out of the dining room. Behind him, the silence felt heavier than ever. The following afternoon, Ethan returned to the mechanic village. He smiled as always, but Zara immediately noticed something different. You look tired. Long day. She didn't press further. Instead, she handed him a bottle of cold water. As they talked, a luxury car suddenly stopped nearby. 3 elegantly dressed women stepped out, followed by 2 men in expensive suits. They walked directly toward Zara. One of the women looked at her wheelchair before speaking. So, you're the famous mechanic. Zara smiled politely. Can I help you? The woman folded her arms. No, I'm here because of Ethan. Zara looked confused. You know him? We've known him for years. Another woman laughed mockingly. I can't believe he spends his time here. She slowly looked around the tiny workshop. This place smells like engine oil. The third woman looked at Zara's patched wheelchair. Poor thing. You actually think someone like Ethan would choose you? The surrounding mechanics fell silent. Customers stopped what they were doing. Everyone listened. Zara lowered her eyes. I've never asked him for anything. One of the men scoffed. Of course not. You only need him to feel sorry for you. The women laughed. You can't even walk. Do you really believe a successful man wants a wife who'll spend her life in a wheelchair? Each sentence struck Zara's heart harder than the last. She wanted to answer, but no words came. One woman leaned closer. You're only making people laugh at him. Leave his life before you ruin it. The group turned and walked away. Their expensive heels clicked loudly against the pavement until they disappeared into their waiting car. Silence remained. No one mocked Zara. No one comforted her either. She simply sat motionless in her wheelchair. Her hands trembled slightly. She stared at the ground long after everyone had returned to work. That evening, Ethan arrived with his usual smile. He immediately sensed something was wrong. Zara? She forced a smile. I'm fine. No. You've barely looked at me. I'm just tired. She quickly packed away her tools. I think I'll close early today. Before Ethan could say anything else, she quietly rolled toward her sleeping corner beneath the old shed. He watched her go, confused. Later that night, rain began falling once again. Water dripped steadily through the holes in the roof. Zara sat alone on her flattened cartons, hugging her thin blanket tightly against her chest. The cruel words replayed over and over in her mind. You can't even walk. You're embarrassing him. Leave his life. Tears slowly rolled down her cheeks. She had never been ashamed of using a wheelchair. She had accepted her disability years ago. But now, for the first time, she saw herself through the eyes of those strangers. She imagined Ethan standing beside her while people whispered behind his back. She imagined newspapers mocking him, business partners laughing at him, his family feeling humiliated because of her. The thought broke her heart. I love him, she whispered through tears. The words surprised even her. She covered her mouth. She had finally admitted the truth. Somewhere between shared meals, quiet conversations, and laughter beneath the old zinc roof, she had fallen deeply in love with Ethan. But love, she believed, sometimes meant letting go. She wiped her tears and looked up toward the leaking roof. If walking away is the only way to protect his future, she closed her eyes. Then that's what I'll do. Outside, the rain continued falling through the darkness. Not far away, Ethan lay awake in his luxurious mansion, unable to understand why the happiest part of his day had suddenly turned into the most painful. Neither of them knew it yet. By sunrise, Zara would make a decision that would change both of their lives forever. Zara did not sleep that night. The rain had stopped, but the cold breeze drifted through the holes in the rusty zinc roof, carrying the smell of wet earth and engine oil. Water still dripped into small puddles around her, yet she barely noticed. She sat quietly in her wheelchair, hugging her thin blanket as tears rolled silently down her cheeks. The cruel words from the previous afternoon refused to leave her mind. You're embarrassing him. He deserves someone better. Leave his life before you ruin it. She closed her eyes tightly. No, she whispered to herself. I will never ruin Ethan's life. She loved him too much to become the reason people laughed at him. She knew what the world saw whenever they looked at her. A homeless woman, a mechanic, a cripple in a wheelchair. No matter how kind Ethan was, people would never stop judging him for loving someone like her. She lowered her head and cried until there were no more tears left. By the time the first rays of sunlight appeared over Lagos, Zara had made the hardest decision of her life. She would disappear, not because she didn't love Ethan, but because she loved him enough to let him go. Quietly, she folded her blanket and packed her few belongings into an old travel bag. She owned almost nothing: 2 changes of clothes, a Bible with worn pages, several mechanic manuals held together with tape, a family photograph of her parents, a few hand tools she treasured more than anything else. Everything she owned fit into one small bag. She carefully placed the bag behind her wheelchair. Before leaving, she looked around the tiny workshop that had been her home for years. The leaking roof, the old engine blocks, the wooden table Ethan had repaired for her after one leg broke. A gentle smile appeared on her face. So many memories, she whispered. She took one last look at the road where Ethan's old pickup truck always appeared every afternoon. Then, without looking back again, she slowly pushed the wheels of her chair and disappeared into the waking city. That afternoon, Ethan finished work earlier than usual. He had spent the morning thinking about Zara. She had seemed so different the previous day. Quiet, distant, almost as if she were carrying a burden she refused to share. He decided to surprise her. On the passenger seat beside him was a small toolbox filled with brand-new mechanic tools. He had noticed how worn out her equipment was, and after much thought, he had chosen simple, high-quality tools instead of anything expensive. He knew Zara would never accept luxury, but she might accept tools she could use for work. As he parked his old pickup truck beside the mechanic village, he smiled. He imagined the look on her face when she opened the toolbox. Carrying the gift, he walked toward the familiar shed. His smile slowly faded. The workshop was empty. No wheelchair, no tools, no Zara. He looked around in confusion. Maybe she was repairing someone's vehicle. He searched nearby workshops. Nothing. He checked behind the sheds. Nothing. Finally, he approached Papa Musa, who was repairing a punctured tire. "Good afternoon, Papa Musa." The elderly man smiled sadly. "Good afternoon, my son. Have you seen Zara?" Papa Musa's expression changed. "You don't know?" Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "Know what?" "She left." The toolbox slipped slightly in Ethan's hands. "Left? Early this morning. Where?" Papa Musa slowly shook his head. "She didn't tell anyone. She only thanked us for our friendship. Then she wheeled herself away." Ethan stared at the empty shed. His voice became barely a whisper. "She didn't say anything?" "No." The silence that followed felt unbearable. Ethan slowly walked into the tiny workshop. Everything that had made the place feel alive was gone. Only faint marks from Zara's wheelchair remained on the dusty floor. He placed the unopened toolbox gently on the workbench. His chest felt painfully tight. For several minutes, he simply stood there, trying to understand, trying to find an explanation. But none came. The next morning, Ethan returned. Still no Zara. The following day, nothing. A week passed. Still nothing. Every afternoon after work, he searched another part of Lagos. He visited mechanic villages, roadside garages, motorcycle repair shops, bus terminals, even small villages on the outskirts of the city. Whenever he saw a woman in a wheelchair from a distance, his heart raced. Every time, it wasn't her. Back at Cole Motors, Ethan struggled to focus. Board meetings became shorter. Reports remained unsigned. During one presentation, a director asked, "Sir, are you listening?" Ethan looked up, realizing he hadn't heard a single word. "I'm sorry." His employees exchanged worried glances. They had never seen their disciplined CEO like this before. Michael quietly approached him after the meeting. "Sir, you've been searching every evening." Ethan nodded. "I have. You haven't found her." "No." Michael hesitated before speaking. "Should I organize a larger search?" Ethan thought for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "Please. I just need to know she's safe." Days turned into weeks. Weeks slowly became months. Despite all the resources available to him, Ethan couldn't find Zara. It was as though she had disappeared from the world. Every evening, he found himself driving past the empty mechanic shed. The unopened toolbox still sat exactly where he had left it, covered in dust, waiting for someone who never returned. One evening, Papa Musa walked over quietly. "You still come." Ethan smiled sadly. "I keep hoping." The old man placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Love is a powerful thing. But sometimes," he sighed, "love also hurts." Ethan looked toward the empty workshop. "I don't understand. If I did something wrong, I wish she had told me." Far away, in another part of Lagos, Zara had found work behind an old neighborhood garage. The owner had reluctantly allowed her to repair vehicles after seeing her incredible skills. She earned just enough to buy simple meals and rent a tiny storage room where she could sleep safely at night. The room was barely larger than a closet. But unlike the mechanic shed, it had a roof that didn't leak. Still, every afternoon around the same time, she found herself looking toward the road. She imagined hearing the familiar sound of Ethan's pickup truck. Sometimes she even smiled before remembering he would never come. She had left without saying goodbye, because if she had seen his face one last time, she knew she would never have found the strength to leave. Late every night, after finishing work, she quietly opened her Bible. Inside its pages was a small photograph. It showed Ethan laughing while holding a wrench during one of their conversations at the workshop. She gently touched the picture. "I hope you're happy," she whispered through tears. "I hope one day you find someone who deserves your heart." She closed the Bible and hugged it tightly to her chest. Unknown to Zara, at that exact moment, Ethan sat alone in his mansion, staring at the unopened toolbox on his desk. Neither of them could sleep. Neither of them could forget. Both believed they were protecting the other. Neither realized that the silence between them was causing far more pain than the truth ever could. 3 months passed. To the rest of the world, Ethan Cole remained the brilliant billionaire behind Cole Motors. Newspapers continued to praise his business achievements. Investors applauded his leadership, and his company expanded into new countries across Africa. But behind the expensive suits and confident speeches was a man whose heart had quietly broken. Every morning he buried himself in work. Every evening he searched for Zara. No matter how exhausted he became, he refused to give up. "She's somewhere in this city," he often told Michael. "I know she is." Michael admired his determination, but each passing day made the search feel more impossible. "We've checked hundreds of garages, sir," he said one afternoon. "We've spoken to mechanics across Lagos. We've even contacted disability support organizations. There hasn't been a single trace." Ethan looked out through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office. "Then we'll keep looking." Across the city, Zara had built a quiet new life. She now worked behind an old neighborhood garage owned by an elderly mechanic named Uncle Bayo. Unlike many people, Uncle Bayo had never looked at her wheelchair before noticing her talent. On her first day, he had simply asked, "Can you repair engines?" She smiled. "I can." "Then that's all I need to know." For the first time in years, someone had hired her without pity. Although the garage was small and poorly equipped, Zara was grateful. She worked from sunrise until evening, repairing taxis, buses, motorcycles, and delivery vans. Customers traveled from neighboring communities after hearing about the talented mechanic in the wheelchair. Business slowly improved. Yet every evening, after everyone left, Zara would sit alone outside the garage. She would watch the sunset and think about Ethan. She wondered if he had forgotten her. She hoped he had, because forgetting her would mean he had moved on to a happier life. Little did she know, he had never stopped searching. One Saturday morning, Ethan decided to search alone again. Without bodyguards or assistants, he drove through neighborhoods he had never visited before. As he passed a crowded market, he noticed a long line of vehicles parked outside a small roadside garage. Curious, he slowed down. "Why are so many people here?" he wondered. He parked across the street. A taxi driver standing nearby smiled proudly. "You're looking for a mechanic?" Ethan nodded. "The best one around." The taxi driver pointed toward the back of the garage. "She's fixing a bus engine." "She?" "Yes. They call her the miracle mechanic." Something stirred inside Ethan's heart. He slowly walked toward the garage. The sound of metal tools echoed through the air. Mechanics moved around hurriedly. Then, he heard a familiar voice. "Please start the engine now." His heart stopped. He knew that voice. Slowly, he walked around the open bus. There she was, Zara. She sat in her old wheelchair, her hands covered in grease as she tightened the final bolt on the engine. For a moment, the world around him disappeared. He simply stared. She looked thinner than before. Her clothes were older. Her wheelchair showed even more signs of wear. But to Ethan, she was still the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. As though sensing someone watching her, Zara looked up. The wrench slipped from her hand. "Ethan," She could barely breathe. Neither could he. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Then Ethan slowly walked toward her. His eyes glistened with tears he had tried to hide for months. "You found me," Zara whispered. "I never stopped looking." Those simple words shattered the wall she had built around her heart. Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry." Ethan knelt beside her wheelchair. The mechanics around them quietly stepped away, giving them privacy. His voice trembled. "Why? Why did you leave without saying goodbye? I searched everywhere. I thought something terrible had happened. I blamed myself every single day." Zara lowered her head. Fresh tears rolled onto her hands. "I couldn't stay. You could have told me. I couldn't." "Why?" She finally looked into his eyes. "Because I love you." The words escaped before she could stop them. Silence surrounded them. She covered her face with trembling hands. "I never wanted you to know. I wanted you to forget me. I thought if I disappeared, you could live the life you deserved." Ethan gently lowered her hands. "Look at me." She slowly did. "I love you too." More tears flowed down her cheeks. "No, you don't. I do. You deserve someone beautiful. You are beautiful. You deserve someone who can stand beside you. You already stand beside me. I can't even walk." His eyes softened. "So what?" She shook her head desperately. "You don't understand. People laugh at you because of me. They insult your family. They'll never accept me. They say I'm ruining your future." Ethan took both of her grease-stained hands into his. "For 3 months, I searched every corner of Lagos. I wasn't searching for someone who could walk. I was searching for the woman I love." His voice broke. "I don't care about their opinions. I care about you." Zara cried openly now. "I left because I thought it would make you happy. It made me miserable." She looked at him with disbelief. "You really searched for me?" "Every day." He smiled sadly. "I even left you a toolbox." Her eyes widened. "A toolbox? I wanted to surprise you. I still drive past your old workshop. The toolbox is still there." Zara covered her mouth as sobs escaped her lips. She imagined the unopened gift collecting dust while Ethan searched for her. The thought broke her heart. "I'm so sorry. You don't have to apologize." "I do. I hurt you. You were trying to protect me." "Yes. But you forgot something." "What?" "You don't get to decide what's best for my heart." She looked confused. "My heart already chose. It chose you." The words wrapped around her broken heart like a warm embrace. At that moment, Uncle Bayo quietly walked outside. He smiled as he watched them. "So," he said gently, "I guess you've finally found each other." Ethan stood and introduced himself. "Thank you for giving Zara a chance." Uncle Bayo smiled. "I didn't give her a chance. She earned it." He laughed softly. "She's the best mechanic I've ever met." Ethan wasn't surprised. "I know." As the afternoon sun painted the sky golden, Ethan looked back at Zara. "I have one more thing to tell you." "What is it?" He took a deep breath. "My name isn't just Ethan." She looked puzzled. "My full name is Ethan Cole." Recognition slowly appeared on her face. "The Ethan Cole? The owner of Cole Motors?" He nodded quietly. Zara stared at him in complete shock. Her lips parted, but no words came. Every strange phone call, every mysterious meeting, every expensive habit he had tried to hide. Suddenly, everything made sense. She looked down at her grease-covered clothes and worn wheelchair, then back at the man she loved. The distance between their worlds suddenly felt greater than ever before. And for the first time since they found each other again, fear returned to Zara's heart. Zara stared at Ethan as though she were looking at a complete stranger. The sounds of the busy garage faded into the background. Mechanics continued repairing vehicles, customers bargained over prices, and engines roared to life, but Zara heard none of it. Only one sentence echoed in her mind. "My name is Ethan Cole, the billionaire, the owner of Cole Motors, one of the richest and most respected businessmen in Africa." The man she had laughed with while eating roasted corn by the roadside. The man who had shared meat pies with her beneath a leaking zinc roof. The man she had fallen deeply in love with. Her hands trembled. "You," she whispered. "You've been hiding this from me?" Ethan lowered his head. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I wanted you to know me, not my money." Tears gathered in Zara's eyes again. "You should have told me. I wanted to. So many times. But every time I tried, I became afraid." "Afraid of what?" "That you would start seeing Ethan Cole instead of Ethan." She closed her eyes for a moment. Then she smiled sadly. "I probably would have." Ethan took a cautious step closer. "I never lied about loving our conversations. I never pretended to admire your strength. Everything I felt was real." "I know," Zara replied softly. "That's what makes this harder." She looked down at her wheelchair. Its faded paint was chipped. One armrest had been repaired with tape, and the front wheels squeaked whenever she moved. Then she looked at Ethan's neatly pressed shirt, polished shoes, and expensive watch that he no longer tried to hide. The difference between them had never seemed so enormous. She slowly backed her wheelchair away. "Ethan, I don't belong in your world." "You do." "No." She shook her head firmly. "I belong here." She pointed around the small garage. "Among people like me. You belong wherever your heart wants to be." My heart already made a mistake. It didn't. It fell in love with someone it can never have. Ethan quickly moved in front of her wheelchair before she could roll away. "Don't say that." She looked up at him through tear-filled eyes. "Why not?" "Because it's not true. My family will never accept you." "I don't care. Your business partners will laugh. Let them. The newspapers will mock you. They already have. The world will say I trapped you because of your money." He smiled gently. "The people who know me know I can't be trapped." She tried to smile, but her heart was too heavy. "You make everything sound easy." "It's not easy. It's worth it." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Zara whispered, "I'm scared." Ethan gently rested his hands on the handles of her wheelchair. "So am I." That honest answer surprised her. "You are. I've built companies. I've negotiated billion-dollar deals. I've stood before thousands of investors. But nothing has frightened me more than the thought of losing you." Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. She wanted to believe him. She truly did. But the fear inside her heart was stronger than hope. The following morning, Ethan drove Zara to the old mechanic village. The first thing he did was retrieve the dusty toolbox he had left months earlier. He carefully wiped the dust away before placing it on Zara's lap. "I bought this for you the day you disappeared." With trembling fingers, Zara slowly opened the box. Inside were beautifully crafted mechanic tools, each arranged neatly in its own place. Professional wrenches, socket sets, precision screwdrivers, electrical testing equipment. Everything a skilled mechanic could dream of owning. Her lips quivered. "You remembered what I needed. I always noticed." She gently lifted one wrench from the box and smiled through her tears. "No one has ever given me a gift like this. You deserve much more." She closed the toolbox carefully. "I'll treasure it forever." News of Ethan and Zara being seen together again spread quickly. This time, people discovered his true identity. Within hours, every major entertainment blog carried the same headline. Billionaire Ethan Cole reunites with homeless mechanic in wheelchair. Television stations discussed the story. Radio presenters debated it. Social media exploded. Some people admired Ethan. Others mocked him relentlessly. He has lost his mind. Surely this is just publicity. A billionaire dating a homeless woman? There must be a hidden reason. At Cole Motors headquarters, employees whispered in hallways. Many wondered whether the rumors were true. Some executives quietly questioned Ethan's judgment. By evening, Ethan was summoned to the Cole family mansion. The atmosphere inside the grand living room felt unusually tense. His father stood near the fireplace. His mother sat silently on the sofa. His younger sister folded her arms. "Ethan," His father began calmly. Sit down. Ethan remained standing. I'd rather stand. His father sighed. The entire country is talking about you. I know. They're talking about this woman. Her name is Zara. His father's expression hardened. I don't care what her name is. I do. His mother spoke gently. Please listen to us. We're worried. Ethan looked at her. I know. His father walked closer. You've worked your entire life to build your reputation. Don't destroy it now. My reputation isn't more important than someone's humanity. This isn't about humanity. It's about reality. Reality? Ethan asked. His father nodded. You're a billionaire. She's homeless. You're healthy. She's confined to a wheelchair. You live in different worlds. Ethan answered quietly. Then I'll build a bridge between those worlds. His sister laughed bitterly. You really think love is enough? No. It's stronger than money. It's stronger than status. It's stronger than public opinion. His father slammed his hand against the table. Enough. You will end this relationship. Ethan remained calm. No. I wasn't asking. I know. For several seconds, father and son stared at each other. Finally, Ethan spoke. You taught me that a person's character matters more than anything else. I listened. I simply learned the lesson better than you expected. Without waiting for another response, he turned and walked toward the door. Behind him, his mother called softly, Ethan. He paused. She wiped away a tear. I don't want to lose my son. He smiled sadly. You won't. But if you force me to choose between hatred and love, he looked back at them. I will always choose love. Then he quietly left. That evening, Ethan drove to the small garage where Zara was finishing work. She looked exhausted. You've had a long day, he said. She nodded. Everyone keeps staring at me. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. He gently took hold of the wheelchair handles. Come with me. Where? I want to show you something. They drove to a quiet hill overlooking the sparkling lights of Lagos. The city stretched endlessly beneath the night sky. Cars moved like tiny streams of light. A cool breeze swept across the hill. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. Do you know why I brought you here? She shook her head. Because whenever life becomes noisy, he pointed toward the peaceful skyline. I remind myself that the noise never lasts forever. He turned to face her. The opinions of people will change. Today's headlines will be forgotten. But if I lose you because I was afraid of criticism, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Zara looked into his eyes. For the first time since learning the truth about his identity, she no longer saw Africa's billionaire. She saw the same kind man who had once shared half a meat pie beneath a leaking roof. Slowly, a gentle smile appeared on her face. She reached for his hand. He held hers without hesitation. Far below them, the lights of Lagos continued to shine. Neither of them knew what tomorrow would bring. They only knew one thing. No matter how fierce the judgment of the world became, their hearts had already chosen each other. The morning sun shone brightly over Cole Motors headquarters as Ethan stood by the large glass windows of his office, looking down at hundreds of employees arriving for work. His mind wasn't on business reports or meetings. It was on Zara. The previous night, as they overlooked the lights of Lagos, he had made a decision. He was done hiding the woman he loved. If people wanted to judge him, they could. He would no longer allow fear to decide his future. He picked up his phone and called Michael. Please ask everyone in the executive conference room to gather in 30 minutes. Yes, sir. And prepare an announcement. What kind of announcement, sir? Ethan smiled. You'll see. 30 minutes later, the conference room was filled with senior managers, engineers, department heads, and company executives. Everyone wondered why the meeting had been called so suddenly. Whispers filled the room. Is there a new investment? Maybe another international partnership. I heard the company is opening a new factory. The doors finally opened. Ethan walked in. Beside him was Zara. She wore a simple navy blue dress beneath her clean mechanic overalls. Her wheelchair had been carefully polished, and her hair was neatly tied back. The room instantly fell silent. Several executives exchanged surprised glances. They recognized her immediately from the news. Ethan stood confidently at the front of the room. "Good morning, everyone." "Good morning, sir," the room replied. "I'd like you to meet someone very important." He looked warmly at Zara. "This is Zara, the most talented mechanic I have ever met." Some employees smiled politely. Others looked uncertain. One executive quietly whispered to another, "She's the woman from the internet." Ethan continued, "Starting today, Zara will serve as a technical consultant for Cole Motors." The room erupted in murmurs. Several engineers looked shocked. One senior manager slowly raised his hand. "Sir." "Yes. With respect." "What qualifications does she have?" The room became quiet again. Everyone waited for Ethan's response. Before he could answer, Zara gently raised her hand. "May I respond?" Ethan smiled. "Of course." She wheeled herself toward the center of the room. "I don't have a university degree." Several people exchanged knowing looks. "I couldn't afford one," she continued calmly. "I learned by watching experienced mechanics. I studied old engineering books people threw away. I practiced every day until repairing engines became part of my life." She smiled gently. "I may not have certificates, but I have experience." The room remained silent. One engineer stood. "With respect, experience is valuable. But this company designs luxury vehicles." Zara nodded. "I know." He pointed toward a prototype engine displayed near the conference room. "If you're willing, can you identify the fault in that engine?" Several employees smiled. It was a difficult challenge. The prototype had intentionally been modified during testing. Even experienced engineers needed diagnostic equipment to find the hidden problem. Zara slowly rolled toward the engine. She asked for no computer, no scanner, no special equipment. She simply listened. She gently touched several components before asking an engineer to start it. The engine ran for only a few seconds before she raised her hand. "Stop," she smiled. "The timing sensor isn't failing. It's receiving an inconsistent signal because the mounting bracket is slightly misaligned." The room fell completely silent. The chief engineer quickly inspected the bracket. His eyes widened. She was right. Exactly right. He looked at Ethan in amazement. "I've checked this engine 3 times. I didn't notice it." A smile spread across Ethan's face. "I told you. She's exceptional." One by one, the doubtful expressions around the room began to disappear. Respect quietly replaced skepticism. Over the following weeks, Zara became one of the most respected people at Cole Motors. She never acted superior. Instead, she worked alongside the mechanics. She listened before giving advice. She encouraged young apprentices. Whenever someone made a mistake, she corrected them with patience rather than criticism. Employees quickly noticed something unusual. She remembered everyone's names. She thanked the cleaners every morning. She shared lunch with technicians instead of eating alone. Even senior engineers began seeking her opinion whenever difficult mechanical problems arose. One afternoon, a young apprentice accidentally damaged an expensive engine component. Terrified, he expected to lose his job. Before anyone could blame him, Zara wheeled over. "I made mistakes too when I was learning." She smiled kindly. "The important thing isn't the mistake. It's learning from it." The apprentice never forgot those words. Months later, Cole Motors celebrated one of the most successful financial quarters in its history. Vehicle repair times had improved. Customer satisfaction had increased. Warranty claims had fallen significantly because of Zara's practical recommendations. During a board meeting, one director smiled. "Our technical department has never performed this well." Another director nodded. "I'll admit it. I doubted her. I was wrong." Even Ethan's father quietly reviewed the performance reports. Every page told the same story. Profits were rising. Employee morale had improved. Innovation was flourishing. Finally, he looked at Ethan. "You chose well." Ethan smiled. "I know." His father remained silent for a moment before asking softly, "Does she know she changed this company?" Ethan looked through the glass wall toward the workshop below. Zara was laughing with a group of young mechanics while helping them solve another engine problem. He smiled warmly. "She doesn't even realize she changes every place she enters." Looking at her, Ethan understood something that no balance sheet could ever measure. The greatest success Zara had brought to Cole Motors was not higher profits or better performance. She had reminded everyone, from apprentices to executives, that true greatness is never measured by wealth, titles, or the ability to walk. It is measured by humility, kindness, perseverance, and the courage to lift others while overcoming your own struggles. 1 year later, Cole Motors had become more successful than ever before. Under Ethan's leadership and with Zara's practical innovations, the company had broken production records, expanded into 3 new African countries, and earned international recognition for the quality of its vehicles. But the achievement Ethan was most proud of had nothing to do with money. It was Zara. The woman who had once slept beneath a leaking mechanic shed was now one of the most respected automotive experts in the country. Yet despite all the success that surrounded her, she remained exactly the same. Every morning, she greeted the security guards before entering the building. She still shared lunch with apprentices and technicians instead of eating in the executive dining room. She still repaired vehicles with her own hands whenever the mechanics needed help. Most importantly, she never allowed fame to change her heart. One Saturday afternoon, Cole Motors hosted the largest automotive innovation exhibition in Africa. The massive event attracted engineers, investors, students, mechanics, government officials, and journalists from across the continent. Thousands of people filled the exhibition center. Luxury vehicles gleamed beneath bright lights. Prototype engines were displayed on elegant platforms. Large screens showcased the company's latest innovations. As the audience waited for the closing ceremony, whispers spread through the crowd. "Mr. Ethan Cole is about to make a special announcement. No one knows what it is." Television cameras turned toward the main stage. Journalists adjusted their microphones. The lights dimmed. Moments later, Ethan walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. Looking around the packed auditorium, he smiled warmly. "Good evening, everyone." The audience responded with loud applause. For many years, Ethan began. People believed success belonged only to the strongest, the richest, or the most educated. He paused. "I believed that once." The room grew quiet. "Then I met someone who changed my life." A large spotlight illuminated the entrance to the stage. Slowly, Zara wheeled herself into view. She wore an elegant emerald green gown that flowed beautifully around her wheelchair. Her hair was neatly styled, and her confident smile reflected the remarkable journey she had taken. The audience immediately rose to their feet. The applause seemed endless. Many people wiped tears from their eyes. Journalists remembered the photographs of the homeless mechanic who had once been mocked by almost everyone. Now she stood before the world, not because anyone pitied her, but because she had earned every bit of respect through talent, humility, and perseverance. Ethan walked toward her. "1 year ago," he said, looking into her eyes, "the world saw a homeless woman in a wheelchair. I saw the strongest person I had ever met." He turned back to the audience. "She taught me that greatness isn't measured by how much money you have. It's measured by how much hope you give to others." His voice grew emotional. When everyone laughed at her, she answered with kindness. When people cheated her, she chose forgiveness. When life knocked her down, she refused to let her heart become bitter. He smiled gently. Without realizing it, she repaired something far more valuable than engines. He looked back at Zara. "She repaired my heart." The audience erupted into applause once again. Then, to everyone's surprise, Ethan slowly knelt before Zara. A small velvet ring box appeared in his hand. Gasps echoed throughout the auditorium. Zara covered her mouth in shock. Tears immediately filled her eyes. "Zara," Ethan said softly, "before I met you, I spent my life searching for the perfect business, the perfect investment, and the perfect future. He smiled through tears. I never realized the greatest blessing in my life would be waiting beneath a broken mechanic shed. You loved me before you knew my name carried wealth. You challenged me to become a better man. You showed me that real strength has nothing to do with standing on two legs. It comes from standing firm in your values. He opened the ring box. Inside sparkled a beautiful diamond ring. My heart chose you long before the world knew your story. Today, I want to choose you again. In front of everyone. He took a deep breath. Zara, will you marry me? By now, tears streamed freely down Zara's face. She looked around the auditorium. She remembered sleeping on cold cartons beneath the leaking roof. She remembered being mocked because she could not walk. She remembered leaving Ethan to protect him from shame. She remembered the day he searched for her and refused to let her disappear from his life. Every painful memory had led to this beautiful moment. She looked back at Ethan and smiled through her tears. Yes, the audience exploded into cheers. People stood, clapping and celebrating. Some of the very mechanics who had once mocked Zara hugged one another with joy. Even Ethan's parents, seated in the front row, wiped tears from their eyes. His father stood first. He slowly walked onto the stage. For a brief moment, Zara became nervous. Then, to everyone's surprise, the older man knelt beside her wheelchair. "I'm sorry," he said sincerely. "I judged you by what my eyes could see. I should have looked at your heart." He gently took Zara's hand. "Will you forgive me?" Without hesitation, Zara smiled. Of course. Her kindness brought fresh tears to his eyes. He embraced her warmly, and the audience applauded once more. A few months later, Ethan and Zara were married in a beautiful ceremony surrounded by family, friends, employees, and members of the mechanic community that had witnessed the beginning of their story. Papa Musa proudly walked Zara down the aisle, smiling through tears as he gave her hand to Ethan. Instead of asking for expensive wedding gifts, the couple requested donations to establish the Zara Foundation for Ability and Skills, an organization dedicated to training people with physical disabilities in automotive repair, engineering, welding, and entrepreneurship. Within its first year, hundreds of men and women with disabilities received free vocational training. Many started successful businesses. Others found meaningful employment. Families that had once lost hope found a new future. Years later, when young mechanics asked Ethan how a homeless woman in a wheelchair had captured the heart of one of Africa's richest billionaires, he always smiled before giving the same answer. "She never stole my heart." He looked lovingly at Zara. She repaired it. And together, they proved to the world that true love does not see wheelchairs, wealth, or status. It sees character. It sees kindness. It sees the beauty of a heart that refuses to give up. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below telling us where you're watching from. Your support helps us create more emotional and inspiring stories. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.